Everybody says it's real. Today I take a step into a time and space of peace and possibility. And here I'm gonna stay until I find my place, my true divinity. Higher consciousness. Let's go higher, higher in our consciousness. Let's go higher, higher consciousness. Let's go higher, come on, in our consciousness. Let's go higher. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with just one step and one idea. I'm moving on, not knowing what is coming next. I'm getting close, I'm getting near to a part of me that touches everything, uniting all reality. I'm the middle between what earth and heaven brings. I am the I am the we.
Greetings, beloved family, and thank you all once again for joining us here this evening on Occult Science Radio. I am Curtis Davis, aka the Illuminated One, and tonight we have with us, I must say, in the 4 to 5 years of me doing this show, one of the most powerful guests that have ever been on Occult Science Radio. I learned of this gentleman through a mutual friend, Rick Smith, as well as another personal friend of mine. And when I began researching his work, I was absolutely blown away. I cannot wait to hear the information that this gentleman has to share with us this evening. For those of you who are unaware of whom I'm referring to, I am talking about Peter Moon. Many of you know him from his famous book series, the Montauk Project. And when I looked at his website and I talked to our mutual friend Rick about him, when he told me that all Peter has to offer, I couldn't wait to get Peter on the show. This is definitely the first of his many appearances to come. So believe me, family, we are in for some very powerful information this evening. So you want to get out your pad and pencil for this one, because we are definitely going to learn some things tonight. So I'm going to start off by thanking our sponsor, TON, the Occult Network. That's www.theoccultnetwork.com. There you will find a plethora of free esoteric content, and you'll also find our most in-depth esoteric content in our premium channel, TON Premium, where, as you always hear me say, you will find some of the most in-depth esoteric content that you won't find anywhere on the net, and you're definitely not going to find it in mainstream media. You can also find the Occult Network on Facebook. Yes, we have a Facebook page. Join our Facebook page there. You can also find the Occult Network on YouTube and Twitter. Join us there as well. And if you really want to keep up with what's going on Occult Science Radio, in addition to the Occult Network, you can find me on Facebook as well, Curtis Illuminated One Davis. So please become a friend of mine on Facebook, join our Facebook page, and then you will be totally in tune with what's going on Occult Science Radio, as well as the Occult Network. So please call in with your questions, family, at 646-649-1987. That's 646-649-1987. And if you have a question for Peter or a comment, don't forget to press number 1 on your keypad, so that way we could get you on the switchboard and take your wonderful questions and comments. Now, having said all that, it's time for me to step aside and welcome our beloved friend, Peter Moon. Peter, welcome, my friend. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Oh yes, believe me, tonight's going to be a great show. I can't wait to hear what you have for us. But before we get started, Peter, just give us a brief background on yourself and what because the Montauk Project. When I began researching that was some very powerful information. So just give us a brief background on yourself and what led you to the very powerful information that you've given us.
Well, I had studied esoteric information in high school, and after graduating high school in California, Northern California, I encountered this group you've heard of as Scientology.
Oh,
and
yes.
Scientology was very different then than it is now, and anyway, by whatever that was during the revolutionary days of the 60s, early 70s, and I did not like going and getting a regular job in society. I thought that was these people were like lemmings going off a cliff. All my friends were going to college, and I said, this is the wrong way to go. If they're going to be the yin or the yang, I'm going to be the yin, or vice versa. So I was studying esoterics. I was communicating with a man named Edward von Tassel. It was very interesting. He was part of a secret society in San Francisco, and I was looking towards joining that. I was probably going to get a career in computer science at that point, but I ran into Scientology. I got involved in Scientology, and what was remarkable about that for me was that I learned that I was a spirit and that I could leave the body, and I actually had experiences doing that, remarkable experiences. So I gained a spiritual awareness that was completely surprise to me, because I was I guess what you call a smart individual, but I was not spiritually aware. I did not grow up in Christianity. I did not grow up with religion, because my father had bad experiences as a youth with the Catholic Church, and he didn't expose us to any sort of Christianity, which he considered to be a crock. So we did not grow up with any religion, and I've studied religions, but so anyway, I became spiritually aware in a very practical manner, and ended up working for L. Ron Hubbard personally. And that was after a year in Scientology. And what's important is not whether Scientology is a valid path or whether it's any good or any bad. Is that what it taught me? So much of its doctrine at that time was about mind control. It was teaching you about mind control. People may well say it is mind control, and at this stage of the game, I would agree with them. But back then, you're trying to free the soul, free the spirit. And so that was, it had a lot to do with implants. You studied implants. Some of the theories were far-fetched. Some of them were not far-fetched. But all of them had to do with mental phenomena. And, of course, if you go back to the root of Dianetics, it comes from a Greek word which means sanity. So when you mention the word sanity, it makes people pretty giddy sometimes. So and what it comes down to is what is fundamentally wrong with this universe. Fundamentally wrong with this universe on a, theologically, existentially, philosophically, and scientifically. So because I was a very existential person even before that, and searching out things, I think I had a very different view on everything. So I used those procedures and techniques to get me to where I wanted to go. In 1983, I left that organization because it had a lot of problems, and I no longer wished to be a part of it. And I came to Long Island with my wife at the time, where I realized when I met Preston Nichols, this is how I got involved in the Montauk Project, but it's important to mention that I had a background in understanding the phenomena of implants, mental gyrations, and stuff that, shrinks just really don't see or perceive. And so anyway, when I discovered Preston Nichols, which was through a business proposition, I met him and I heard all this stuff about Montauk, and I got interested. I wanted to find the whole story. So I got to know Preston, and after 6 months of, knowing him, we decided together to do a book together. And there was a lot of processing of information, sorting through, because at that point, people on Long Island did not want to talk about the Montauk Project. They did not like it. They'd said it didn't happen. They would get very angry. Right now, it's been put into the society as a urban legend, and you can talk about it, and people, just like, nobody minds you talking about Area 51, nobody minds you talking about Montauk. But 20 years ago, it was a very dirty word. Not Montauk, but the Montauk Project. And there was a lot of resistance about talking about it, and it was so I had a background in dealing with this, and so and dealing with Preston was not easy, because Preston is a genius, but he kind of talks backwards sometimes, and I had to tape everything and kind of re-edit, re-scramble it, and re-edit it, so it made more linear sense than it would have otherwise. So Preston dealt with a lot of phenomena. He's called eccentric, bizarre, and whatnot, and he is all these things, but he's also a genius. And you have to put up with a certain amount of dross to get through to the kernels of what he's talking about sometimes, which is what he had to offer that was so important. You see a lot of people that have been through implant machines or shock machines or different forms of psychiatric or psychological torture, and they don't necessarily have much to offer in the way of science. Preston had a plethora of theories and avenues that explored the consciousness of time. And since I published basically his work, the Montauk Project Experiments in Time, which is his story, not mine, the whole scientific world has changed its attitude on time. Totally changed. I mean, even Stephen Hawking has come on board. But as one scientist said to me, anybody who changes his position on time so much begins to not really have a lot of credibility. He's changed it so much. We've never had to change our position on time. We've changed, literally, the way the world looks at time. And we've had a bonus from that book being published. We've had several, I guess what you'd call, satellite issues coming to the forefront, which may or may not be more important than the Montauk Project itself. Who can say? But Dr. David Anderson is one of them, who is a premier time scientist who can actually control time, speed it up and slow it down. And so much controversy is gathered around David's work that he's had to go completely underground right now. He cannot communicate. Prominent people in society have chosen to attack him.
Wow.
And this is the retardation of humankind. Not all humankind is retarded, and this is perhaps a very good avenue to go into what you mentioned before the show is Noble Drew Ali. Is you want to talk about wisdom that's been suppressed, retarding of a people, retarding of humanity. I think it revolves very much around the issues of Noble Drew Ali and what he brought forth to the world. And are we here to receive and experience enlightenment, or are we here to choke the patient? Looking at humanity as a patient. And so people do not react kindly to wisdom that they do not have or their superiors do not have. Whereas a wise person is going to say, that's something I don't know. I want to learn it. There's a contingency which will say, that information is not wrong. You're not going to preach it, as much as sort of as happens in the New Testament. We don't like this information. It subverts the ruling authority. We're going to extinguish it.
Yes, indeed. And it's a shame that it's like that, but it's to be expected because you know as well as I do, Peter, that we're living in a world where the quote-unquote higher-ups do not want certain information to get out because it's a threat to their rulership, if you will, Okay, but we're living in a day and time now, and I honestly believe this to the depths of my soul, that, with people like yourself, and others like there, Rick Smith and Mark Passio and Jan Irving and many others, this information is coming to the forefront. So when you speak of, prominent people attacking Dr. Anderson, well, of course they're going to attack him because he's bringing forth truth that's a threat to a lot of the fallacy that's been perpetrated out here. So yeah, that's to be expected. And when you speak of Noble Drew Ali, when, you've done extensive research on him, as well, what exactly, what type of knowledge did this man bring forth? Because from what I understand, he was under heavy attack as well, to where he basically had to go underground. So basically, I'm just really beginning to research him. I'm not really well versed in Noble Drew Ali as I should be, but according to your research, what did Noble Drew Ali give to the world, or at least attempt to give to the world, that really led to, the all-out war against him?
That led to the what?
That led to the all-out attacks against him by the quote-end-quote powers that be.
Well, I will tell you how I discovered Noble Drew Ali. It was through one of the books I eventually published, Ong's Hat, at the beginning, but before it became a book in hardback or rather trade paperback format. It was an internet phenomena that consisted of a incunabula catalog called the incunabula. Incunabula means it refers to a birthing cradle, like an incubator, or a collection of rare manuscripts. And the incunabula was a collection of rare manuscripts on quantum physics, basically, that indicated there were parallel realities, parallel universes, and it was accompanied by a legend of a place called Ong's Hat in the Pine Barrens of southern New Jersey. And this was an ashram in the 70s, which had been earlier Ong's Hat Rod and Gun Club, which was where the Princeton physicists used to go for vacationing back to the days of John von Neumann, who was the director of the Montauk Project. The Philadelphia experiment, I should say. And so John von Neumann and all these physicists that were just utterly brilliant from Princeton, which is where the Philadelphia experiment was hatched. The Philadelphia experiment being the forerunner of the Montauk Project, and where they made the USS Eldridge disappear to radar, where it flipped out of this continuum, and time teleportation and time experiences, time travel experiences were discovered or came upon. So the Montauk Project was the continuation of that research. Now, where Noble Drew Ali was connected to this ashram at Ong's Hat, New Jersey, this ashram was a very eclectic place of different disciplines and wild and far out stuff, which included physics, hardcore physics that was, according to the stories, was perpetrated or conveyed by physicists who were of a hippie persuasion, and this opened a door to pharmaceuticals, hallucinogenics, which were part of the ashram experimentation. There was also Sufi presence there, so you had a very mysterious Sufi influence, and people connected to the Moorish Science Temple of America. The Moorish Science Temple. Well, not the Moorish Science, just the Moorish Science Temple. And this was based upon a character called Noble Drew Ali. And I don't really remember at this point if Noble Drew Ali was given much mention there, if at all. But I looked into the Moorish Science Temple and found out that it was historical, went back to a character called Noble Drew Ali. And the first thing I read about it was in a book called Sacred Drift by Peter Lamborn Wilson, who was connected to the Ongshat legends. And the name Wilson is very prevalent in my research. Wilson comes up a lot when in all the synchronous threads that I've done. And that was just one more name of Peter Lamborn Wilson. But he talks about Noble Drew Ali, and he goes into some of the history of Noble Drew Ali. But even reading that book, I was a little I quite didn't have the credulity that Noble Drew Ali was really a character. I mean, it was this was like legendary. And Peter Lamborn Wilson, it's been so long since I read the book. He's a very creative writer and a very interesting writer. But this, I didn't know how much of it was actually just kind of a legend, because he was part of a group called the Moorish Orthodox Church. And the Moorish Orthodox Church was supposedly seeking to continue the Moorish Science Temple, which, according to everything I was reading here, not necessarily in that book, I don't recall, but was kind of like a lost part of history during the early part of last century. So the Moorish Orthodox Church was here to carry forward. Now, this was a big red herring. The Moorish Orthodox Church had a presence in Millbrook, up where Timothy Leary used to do his experiments up in Millbrook, New York. And so it was right across the street or in the same building as the League for Spiritual Discovery, LSD, which Leary had formed. And it was really, the Moorish Orthodox Church was really sort of a CIA front, as far as I could, as far as I understand it. It was not a legitimate successor to the Moorish Science Temple. Now, at that point, I mean, the Moorish Science Temple exists to this day. I have friends who are a part of it. But at that time, I had no idea Moorish Science had any continuation. Now, Moorish Science goes back to the character you mentioned, Noble Drew Ali. Drew Ali his history is somewhat apocryphal, but he was a real character, we know this. And he grew up in North Carolina. His parents, he had Native American blood. He passed away. His parents passed away, and he grew up with an aunt in Newark, New Jersey, who beat him. I suppose we should say he was a person of color. He had dark skin. Mm-hmm. And he had paranormal abilities, and he's a very gifted individual. So in his very young man, I don't even think he was 19 at the time, he's either stowed away, I think he was supposed to have joined the circus at one point, and also have stowed away on a ship and gone to Egypt, where when he arrived in Egypt, he came upon a group of initiates, mystery school initiates who were expecting him and greeted him, and they basically gave him a task, which was they blindfolded him and took him into the Great Pyramid. I believe they took him to the King's Chamber, and they said, okay, here you are, now find your way out. Now, the initiate doesn't necessarily make it. Now, keep in mind, when you're going over to Egypt, you're not dealing with all the, child labor laws and issues of safety and protocols that we have built into our society in America. It's, it's kind of a no man's land in some respects in Egypt.
Wow.
But so anyway, he obviously did this of his own will, but they blindfolded him, put him in the Great Pyramid, and the attitude is, good luck, you might never survive. I think it was 4 days later, they found him between the paws of the Sphinx. The implication was that he got there, not by crawling out of the pyramid, but by crawling underneath a complex of caves and tunnels and ended up between the paws of the Sphinx. In any case, they found him, and he had passed the test. Now, finding him between the paws of the Sphinx is very symbolic, and we won't go into the symbolism of that because it kind of might digress from. But it showed that he had a great deal of enlightenment. I mean, the Sphinx being the riddle of mankind. He was told the true history of the Moorish people at that point by these initiates, and that America was Almaricanos. We got the name America from Almaricanos, not from Amerigo Vespucci, and Almaricanos means El Morocco, and that Morocco was the Sultanate of Morocco was the ruler of America at one point. Now, This goes back into a very deep history, and he was here. He came back to America to teach the so-called black people, which were really of Moorish descent and heritage, their true heritage, and that this whole stuff about African slaves, I mean, there were a lot of slaves brought over from Africa, don't get me wrong, but this was not where all the black people came from. There were black people of Moorish descent here in America. This is why we have cities like Cairo, Illinois, Memphis, Tennessee, and Alabama was either called Ali Bamu or Ali Baba.
Right.
And all of these names, Alexandria, which might have had a more, and so there's a lot of history is a charade that we've been told, and there's the story of which I brought out in my book Synchronicity and the Seventh Seal, the story of George Washington and the chopping down of the cherry tree. The Moroccan flag was the red flag, the red standard. It was called the cherry tree because it was red. Originally, it was pure red. They later put a green saber on it, or a green pentagram on it to distinguish it from maritime red flags. But it was originally red, and it was called the cherry tree. So George Washington chopping down the cherry tree referred to the fact that the first treaty with the United States of America was with Morocco, and part of that arrangement between their diplomacies was that Morocco had sued America during the Revolutionary War because they were enslaving their people. The Sultan was so they sued America, and America did not respond. So Morocco started taking American ships hostage, and this resulted in a diplomatic squabble, which eventually was settled with the first peace treaty of the United States of America. And part of that settlement was that Moorish citizens, going back years, hundreds of years in some cases, should be released. And all they needed to do was go to the president, go to the White House and say, I am a free Moorish national, let me go, and they would be freed from bondage. The problem with George Washington is not that he didn't recognize it, was that he didn't announce it. He didn't make it known. He obscured the fact even from his own slaves. He didn't tell them, we made a deal with the Moroccans and you can go if you're a Moorish national. And so this is George Washington chopping down the cherry tree. And this is a part of history that we're not allowed to know. And Noble Drew Ali was here to teach people this. And he was actually empowered to teach Moorish science by Woodrow Wilson. There's the name Wilson coming up again. Woodrow Wilson, he allowed him, thinking that nothing would become of Noble Drew Ali's movement. And Noble Drew Ali took the so-called black community by storm because he had a background in circus, he'd make these posters, and they would play songs at these revivals like Muslims, that old-time religion, instead of give me that old-time religion, Muslims, that old-time religion. And he was the first Muslim prophet in America. And he is the forerunner of the Black Muslim movement. It was not called Black Muslim at that time. And Noble Drew Ali, and I researched this and found out, who was behind the denigration of Noble Drew Ali, because he had a lot of resistance. He was scaring the living daylights out of the then J. Edgar Hoover fledgling FBI, and they were monitoring him closely, but they were as frightened of him as they were frightened of riots that were breaking out in northern cities like Chicago and Detroit, where the black communities, Noble Drew Ali was pretty much based in Chicago, but where the black communities had enough, and they were revolting against the discrimination that had taken place. So he was a very powerful character, and he was a character of peace as well. He believed in following the Constitution, and he had a great demeanor about him and a very charismatic presence, and he was said to manifest healing and miracles. But what happened in the 20s was the Freemasons created a radio show. It was the first the only things that were nationally syndicated at that time were football games. I don't think there were big college games. Red Grange, the days of Red Grange. I don't think they were even doing baseball nationally syndicated at that point. But it was football. The first nationally syndicated series program was Amos and Andy, spoof on these bumbling black people. But what the target of Amos and Andy was the Moorish Science Temple. Because if you go back and you watch the old Amos and Andy TV show or the radio show, they were talking about the Mystic Order of the Knights of the Sea. That's what Amos and Andy belonged to, the Mystic Order of the Knights of the Sea. And the head of the congregation was Kingfish. Pretty much anybody that remembers those shows will remember Kingfish, a highly comical character, and they had the holy mackerel and the congregation of sardines. The congregation were called sardines. And people, of course, think this is just some absurd lampooning of a ridiculous black man. It was much more than that, and it was high level 32nd degree Masons that were doing this spoof, and they did a very good job of creating a ridiculous character. In one of the episodes, they have Stargazer Noble, or they have called him Drew. I think they call him Drew Bendo or Ali Bendo. Ali Bendo, they call him, and he's a stargazer who's thrown in jail for fortune telling. And this is shortly before, or shortly after, I don't remember which, Noble Drew Ali was put in jail. They really didn't have anything to charge him with. They did release him. There's much more. Well, according to rumors, he was beaten by the police, but that does not stand up to at least what Elihu Pleasant Bay told me, who knew one of Noble Drew Ali's wives, and he had multiple wives, being a Muslim, and he said that he was not beaten. He left. He was. I think he was supposed to go under some sort of court procedure, but because there was a lot of scandal around, people had stolen things from him and whatnot, and there was a lot of legal stuff. But he basically left his body because he said the burden on the Moorish people was too great. So he exited. He said he could do more from beyond this world, and he exited. But there's another important thing, and one of the most troubling aspects of the legends and as well as the history of Noble Drew Ali was that he was at a Pan American conference in Havana, Cuba, where all of the dignitaries, state diplomats from all countries of the world, particularly Pan American countries, gathered and he was shown a mandate, which basically showed that the America was the rightful possession of the Moors. And this mandate was so powerful, and I believe it was showed to him by the Secretary of State, or the Secretary of State of America saw it. But after this conference in 1928, all of the European countries pulled their money out of America because they saw that America was risky, because the true corporate shenanigans of the entire country were being, and the sovereignty of America as it stood was being threatened by the presence of Noble Drew Ali and this mandate. Now, we've never been able to turn up this mandate, but what we do know is that after that conference, there was a stock market crash because of this, and then the entire country was reorganized and reincorporated. And you had all this FDR coming along in the 1932, and the Admiralty Court superseding the regular United States Constitutional Court, and the taken off of the gold standard. So there was all this, and United States of America becoming a corporation, and all these sort of sleight of hand legal manipulations, which is not my expertise, but you can study them, and they certainly exist. And this was all as a result of the presence of Noble Drew Ali in this world. And then what happened, when he left, there was a whole just horrible infighting with the Moorish Science Temple, and it was essentially destroyed. What you had was a man emerging out of this who was a very dubious man, with a big FBI file as well, Wallace Farad, or Wally Fard, as he was known. He was Polynesian-looking. He was from Hawaii, and he was the successor. But was he the rightful successor of Noble Drew Ali? No. He was the effective successor, and he had a lot of problems. He was supposedly involved with the ashram at Ongshat, or the land that they eventually got. That was rumor. But he was succeeded by Elijah Muhammad, who everybody's familiar with, and that began the Black Muslim movement. The Black Muslim movement, while they do acknowledge Noble Drew Ali as an earlier forerunner, it is not the Moorish Science Temple. The Moorish Science Temple still exists. They have chapters in different cities like Baltimore, up in Harlem here in New York, Chicago, and many other cities. They are not necessarily the only representation of Moors, but there are certainly the Moorish Science Temples. Most of my Moorish friends do not belong to the temple. They don't necessarily see eye to eye with it, but it is the Moorish movement which is important. The mandate, which we can't get our hands on, which is probably somewhere in the Vatican. It goes back to the capitulation of Granada between the Moors in 1492, the expulsion of the Jews on March 31st, 1492, and the next day, April 1st, 1492, which is effectively the first April Fool's Day. And what happens is, after the Jews have been expelled legally, they tell the Moors, you can go back to Morocco. This is in Spain. After the Spanish at Santa Fe and Granada have conquered the Moorish army by starving them out, the Catholics hated the Moors. And they said, you can go back to Morocco. We have ships waiting for you. The Moors did not believe them. When they sent people out to look, well, they were indeed ships. So the Moors went on their way to the ships, and they burned the ships on their way to the ships, and they burned their homes while they left their homes. And that was like April Fool's, ha, ha, ha. That was the first April Fool's Day,
wow,
according to Moorish legend. So this is, and there was supposedly there was a capitulation between the Moors at Granada, whereby they ceded the new continent, as it was called, and it was called in the papers, if you look at that, isn't Ferdinand and Isabella gave Columbus. It does not say Asia, it does not say India, it calls it the new continent. And he goes to explore the new continent. And they essentially had some sort of right or lease on this land, and this would be buried somewhere in Vatican archives. And Columbus is basically going there to set up the triangular trade route, the forerunner of the triangular trade route, and to enslave the Moorish nation. And the rest is history, and this is why you have all this ridiculousness that Columbus was the discoverer of America. This is utterly ridiculous to any legitimate historian. Even if they don't believe in the Moors, they know that he did not discover America and the whole history. So that's my overview of Noble Drew Ali in a nutshell. And there's a big biography which actually Rick Smith got through me that was sort of the life work of Elihu Pleasant Bay, who knew Noble Drew Ali's wife, and he did a vast, extensive work of the Moorish science history and Noble Drew Ali.
I see. Excellent. And before we go into your more recent work, Peter, your Mystery of Egypt, the First Tunnel, and your work with Transylvania, we're going to take a quick call from the switchboard. But I'm very interested because I've always been fascinated with Egypt. And being involved with the occult. When I heard you mention Transylvania, I was like, this is really going to get interesting. So, yeah, we're definitely, after we take this call, we definitely want to hear more about your recent work. All right, and we have a caller from the 215 area code. Caller, if you're there, please state your name and where you're calling from.
Yeah, how you doing? My name is Mo. I'm calling from Philly.
Hi.
Greetings. How are you?
Hi, how you doing? I got a quick question. What's the difference between the Seven Circle Quran and the Aquarian Gospel? Because they both seem to tell the same exact story. What's your opinion of it?
Well, the Circle 7 Quran is a book that Noble Drew Ali presented. I'm not an expert on either one, but he's talking about the Aquarian Gospel of Jesus Christ, which is basically an occult book, and I think it, if I'm not mistaken, I think it predates Noble Drew Ali's Circle 7 Quran, and it basically tells about the missing years of Jesus, or some of the missing years of Jesus, and Noble Drew Ali, much of the information in there is similar, very similar, if not identical, but I think, so it makes you wonder if the Circle 7 Quran is a compilation of, but it includes that data, and it's sort of tells, what it is, I think what's important is it tells of the mystery tradition of the character we know as Jesus Christ, who during his missing years went through various mystery schools. So I would say that my interpretation of it is that Noble Drew Ali was initiated into mysteries through mystery schools, and this began with his adventures into Egypt, and they would have been fosterers or perpetrators of the information as the author of the Aquarian Gospel of Jesus Christ, whoever that was. So I believe that he was similarly initiated as was the author, and that's why it occurs in both books. Whether he was aware of that book or not, I couldn't tell you. I hope that answers the question.
Okay, caller, do you have any more questions or comments?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah. No, I guess that pretty much answers it. I got disconnected at the beginning of it, so I'm going to have to download and listen to it again. But you're giving a lot of great information.
Yes, he is.
One more quick question. When the Moors left Spain, was it Moors or was it Hebrew Israelites or black Jews at the time leaving Spain when you was talking?
Oh, it was, well, first, the Jews were expelled on the 31st of March. They were officially expelled by decree. The Moors were not officially expelled. They were effectively expelled and effectively humiliated without it being, publicized or waved in everybody's face. The Jews were a convenient scapegoat, because you got to remember, and even to this day in Europe, there is great enmity towards the Jews by the predominantly Christian faith of the Europeans. I mean, the hatred is almost incidental. It's there's a great deal of bigotry against Jews, which is just inbred into the thinking patterns of the religious people in Europe. It's not the same in America. People might have attitudes about Jews here, but if they're whatever, but it's not the same. It's not the same. So I know that during the Inquisition, they forced Jews to convert to Christianity, and the same with Moors. It was wise to convert to Christianity just to become like a Trojan horse, so that you didn't appear threatening. Some of the Jewish people would do their rituals in secret. So I imagine there were black Jews. We don't hear too much. I know the Huguenots were basically a collection of people who were of a secret faith, and they posed as Christians. And I know that there were Moors involved with those, and there probably were Jews too. And they formed the first, before St. Augustine was a Huguenot community, down where St. Augustine, Florida, which is recognized as the first city in North America, European city. It's not really, but St. Augustine was there to wipe out the Huguenots, who were recognized as Protestants, but they were Protestants only to hide the fact that they were more of what you were alluding to, Jewish Moorish persuasions.
Interesting. Very. Yeah, thank you, caller, for calling in. Excellent questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Peace and blessings to you. Now, Peter, let's turn our attention to your more recent work. Okay, The Mystery of Egypt, that you wrote with Radu Cinamar. And I've always been fascinated with ancient Egypt or ancient Kemet. Okay, I haven't had a chance, unfortunately, to visit there yet, but I'm working on it. Please, let's talk more about the Mystery of Egypt and your work with Transylvania.
Okay, well, this is it's interesting to tie it to the Noble Drew Ali, because it's not easy to correlate the Noble Drew Ali work that I've done with all the Transylvania stuff, although there are some correspondences. But The Mystery of Egypt is not actually written by me. It's written by Radu Cinamar. It's the third book in a series which includes Transylvania Sunrise, the first book, Transylvania Moonrise, the second book, and Mystery of Egypt, which is the third book, Mystery of Egypt, the First Tunnel. And the cover of the Mystery of Egypt has the Sphinx of Egypt with also the Romanian Sphinx. And in between the two is a current or vortex on the cover, and showing a connection between the two sphinxes. And most people are only learning or are not aware of the Romanian Sphinx, which I've been to twice and will be returning this summer for August 12th. If anybody, there's still some openings with it. JonetteCrowley.com, JONETTE Crowley, CROWLEY.com. I'm going to be accompanying her on a tour that she's sponsoring and doing. I will be a guest of hers from about the 9th of August to about the 19th, 20th. I'm not sure the exact dates, but you can go there. It would be nice to have a Moorish brother on that trip. But anyway, this Sphinx is in the Bucegi Mountains of Romania, which are close to the border of Transylvania, and they are above the tree line. The Sphinx is above the tree line, and it's in an area where the glaciers did not invade for the Ice Age. It was kept. So this Sphinx is said to be some 50,000 years old at least, and as well as the chamber beneath it. Now, the chamber was discovered and is the subject of the book Transylvania Sunrise through ground-penetrating radar from satellites at the Pentagon, and the whole book is about the opening of this chamber and all the political intrigue and infighting that takes place between the Italian Freemasons who are spearheading it, the Romanian occult department, Department Zero, which is headed by the main character in the story, Caesar Brad, who was tutored by a Dr. Zen of Red China, who was their paranormal psychologist, who set up the Department Zero, their secret occult department, and brought Caesar Brad to the front. So he's the head of Romanian Department Zero, and then the Italian Freemasons are trying to get in there, and what eventually happens through a lot of covert manipulation between the two, all these secret forces, is that the Romanians and the Americans form a very strong alliance. And you see this in the newspapers. The Romanian-American alliance becomes incredibly strong. Romania becomes a part of NATO. There's unprecedented diplomatic negotiations and relations between the two countries because the Romanians have this special chamber and the Americans have the technology to get at it. So this chamber, when they discover it and they open it, which is some hundreds of yards below the surface of the Romanian Sphinx and embedded in a mountain, is an ancient chamber which has holographic technology, which includes the ability to put your hand over a table that's 6 foot high. I mean, big beings built this, and it reads out your DNA holographically.
Wow.
The closer you put it to the table, the more microscopic is the reading out of the DNA. You put your hand on another table or another part of the table, and it'll read out the DNA of another life species from another planet, and you can tell the star system and the planet from a projection of that star system. It might say Orion, it might say Pleiadian, whatever it is. It shows the life form. A 3D holographic representation, if you put them both over at the same time, it'll show a hybridization of those two life forms. What you have here is a virtual Noah's Ark. And this concept takes us beyond the two-dimensional referencing of a document like the Old Testament, which is just, pathetic in terms of its ability to render such a incredible, holographic thing, You're reading a two-dimensional text when you read the Old Testament. How true can a two-dimensional reference frame be, like the Holy Bible? It's two-dimensional. It's not even three-dimensional, let alone, it's not holographic. So here you have a document or a level of truth or a potential level of truth being, jumping us up and saying, wow, this whole concept of Noah's Ark, it's not like a bunch of animals 2 by 2 copulating with each other. That's ridiculous. It makes no sense. Of course, it does make sense as an analogy. And the whole history of Noah's Ark, by the way, goes back into Egypt. That is a watered-down rendition of Egyptian history, the flood of the Nile. But anyway, Noah's Ark is a good metaphor for, and this holographic stuff is even a better metaphor. What is all the potential of DNA? If there was a character such as they describe God in the Old Testament, he's much more able to create this phenomena than say an ark with a bunch of animals in it that are going to repopulate the earth. So, but here you have this whole DNA scientific readouts. Who made this stuff? Who's coming up with this concept? So anyway, there is also a part of that chamber which is called the projection hall. And the projection hall is a bioresonant chamber that shows the history of the world up to about 500 AD. They don't know why it doesn't go beyond 500 AD. and this information is coming after 3 to 6 weeks of exploration of the chamber. That's about where that book was written from. They've explored it for like some 9 years since. Now, that chamber, that what I said, the history of the Earth is bioresonant, meaning if you looked at it, you'd see a different history than I would. And if I looked at it, I'd see a different history than the lady down the street. We'd all look at it through our own bioresonant interface. Mm-hmm. So, we might see some vast similarities, but you might look more at where your ancestors came from, reference framed or religious background. I might look through mine. A Japanese person might look totally through different lenses. So we'd all look through different things to see history of the world but it was a very fast summary history. Now, the bioresonant device is very important. Now, these 3 in the back of this projection hall are 3 tunnels, and the 3 tunnels lead to 3 different places. One goes to Tibet, one goes to Egypt beneath the Giza Plateau, and one goes into the inner earth. And one of these tunnels, called the first tunnel, is the one that goes to Egypt, and that becomes the subject of the 3rd book in the series, Mystery of Egypt. And it's very important at this point to add that the 2nd book, Transylvanian Moonrise, reveals more information, because the author of the book, Radu Cinamar, who had a chance to visit the chamber and actually report on it and see the history of the world in a summated form, he writes that in the 1st book, and when he discovers the chamber and talks about it for a chapter and makes some diagrams of it, the book ends. And then the 2nd book begins with a lot of corroboration in the Romanian press of the story, which actually did appear in the Romanian press. And then it occurs with Radu being sought out by a mysterious Tibetan Lama. The interface with who is a man named Eleanor, being a male name in Romanian, it's a pseudonym, and Eleanor is the go-between. So he goes to Eleanor's house to meet the Tibetan Lama, and Eleanor is an alchemist who is part of a tradition where you can live hundreds of years through ancient alchemy. And he, I guess, is 60 years old, but he looks like he's 27. So this is a whole dialogue between the two. What's particularly fascinating about this is I'm supposed to meet Eleanor in the next, 4 or 5 months.
Wow.
And this, Radu wanted to meet me from the beginning, but he said it hasn't been time yet. It's not been safe because of all the scrutiny that's put on him by the government when he's in America. He's been in America several times. He said he's been very close to my house. But he didn't visit me because he said it would cause me more scrutiny and problems than I need. So it looks like, as of this time, he said, Eleanor will visit me. And this is going to open up a new horizon of research, because it also opens me to the prospect of perhaps being initiated into this tradition of alchemy. That remains to be seen. It's very coherent if you read the book. He says in several pages what you won't find in other alchemical texts that have been written for thousands of years. So just the live energy in the book that he presents. Now, I would imagine that I will eventually read Radu following this meeting. But in that book, Transylvania Moonrise, the Tibetan Lama reveals himself to be Dr. Zen, who was the one who tutored Caesar, who opened up this chamber in the Buchegi Mountains. And so this is all being orchestrated by a Tibetan Lama who was part of the Dalai Lama's court in the 50s, and he escaped prior to the Chinese invasion of Tibet, and he ends up being a leading character in the occult department of the Chinese government. So he's a very mysterious character. And it's very important when you mention Tibet to realize that the Dalai Lama was never, ever a pivotal character in terms of what's really going on in Tibet. That he's more of a figurehead, sort of like our president is with our secret government here.
Exactly.
So this character, I wouldn't want anybody to think that I'm implying that this character was ever taking orders from the Dalai Lama or would ever take orders from the Dalai Lama. The Dalai Lama is all wrapped up in the CIA. He was sponsored by the CIA. He was smuggled out by the CIA. He's taken, he's been funded by them. So it's like you can't consider the Dalai Lama with a straight face. Although he has a laugh, which I get a big kick out of. I enjoy his laugh. It sounds rather forced, but I enjoy it. But besides that, the Lama takes Radu with Eleanor to Transylvania, to an ancient mountain area which was the home of Rama in the Vedic classic, the Ramayana. The Ramayana is one of the great classics of Vedic Indian literature, and all the events in the Ramayana took place in Transylvania according to this story. And Rama was a great character of the Vedic religion, and he takes him in a space translation, which is very well described, to Tibet, where he enters a cave. Radu does, and he meets this blue goddess, Mashandi. I've written a lot about the blue race. Mashandi is a Dakini, meaning a tantric goddess, and she gives him a manuscript, which becomes book 4, which I'm working on the editing. It's basically my job to edit these books. They're translated from Romanian into English, and then I edit them into understandable English. And I sometimes, in all the books, I've added my experiences in Romania, my corroborations, and some of my adventures in Romania to some of the holy sites in Transylvania, and as well to the Sphinx. And some of my interactions with Dr. David Anderson. For example, Transylvania Moonrise has the whole description of his time reactor, which solves the world's free energy program issues, and a brief description of how time, pretty extensive actually, how time has been misdefined by science. Time being defined as distance. So, which was taught to me by Dr. David Anderson. So there's a few other themes that weave their way into Radu's adventures by my own additional experiences. Now, that manuscript is sort of the point of the second book, but there's a lot more around it. There's a lot of esoteric information. That's just a very quick overview, which takes us to the third book, Mystery of Egypt, where Radu is taking care of Eleanor's villa, which has a huge alchemical library as well as a alchemical laboratory in the basement. And he is visited by Caesar once again, who he hasn't seen in a long, long time, who wants him to become a part of Department Zero to go on this mission through the tunnel to Egypt beneath the Giza Plateau. And this, they're going to go in specially designed cars with cold fusion technology, and a team of Americans and Romanians is a small team, three Romanians and 2 Americans. And one of the Americans is a very intriguing character who's named Aiden, and he's a sort of a tech nerd, but he's got a holographic laptop computer, which the keyboard is holographic, the projections are holographic, and he said that he feels like he's telepathically connected to the circuitry inside the computer, which he said is tied to Hilbert space. And Hilbert space is mathematics that's interdimensional space, basically. So the idea of a computer being sort of like software programmed into the actual dimensions of Hilbert space is fascinating. And he's a decryptor, so he goes along to help them figure out certain things on this journey. But basically, they go through the tunnel, and the tunnel is actually not a regular tunnel. The other two tunnels that we're told are regular tunnels. This tunnel goes for a short distance, and then it basically has a series of crystals, and there's illustrations of them in the book, diagrams actually, and it goes into a parallel reality. The tunnel, so when they're going through the tunnel, they feel a real tunnel, but it's not a tunnel in the physical sense as we know it, but it's taking them on a trip when it's got its own memory, like so that it's already there. When they leave the tunnel, it's no longer there as far as they can see, but it's still there somewhere in hyperspace. And when they go through that tunnel with its stationary points, it looks like a regular tunnel where they stop and eat or whatever they do. And they eventually get to a place beneath the Giza Plateau where they're there to pick up some slates, which are actually DVDs. They look like a slate tablet by an ancient civilization, and they are DVDs of the history of the world, but extensive histories. And there are so many DVDs, they can't even take them all on this journey. They're there to gather a bunch, and there's a lot of information on each one. So if they were to bring them back, they'd have to have a whole team of people. They'd have to have a team of people like they did in the book Fahrenheit 451, where you have everybody, each person remembers a novel, because, books have been outlawed. So you have all these people that, somebody can recite all these different books. That's how in the book Fahrenheit 451, literature is kept alive by each person memorizing a book. In the case of this, you'd have to have each person watching one of these slate so-called DVDs and saying, this is what's this history of the world. You'd have to have a whole team of people to figure out the history. There's also a time travel device in the chamber, which becomes a focal point, but it's a consciousness time travel. You time travel in your consciousness, not in a physical modality. And this chamber, they determine with the computer guy that there is a tunnel from the Great Pyramid going in the direction of this chamber, but then it veers off as if they were distracted. There's artifacts of an ancient war that took place. They find a skeleton in there, which is a reptoid skeleton. And the people, they said that the chamber was much older than the pyramid and the Sphinx, but that the people that were in the pyramid and the Sphinx were trying to get to the chamber at some point, but they got thwarted in their attempt. And it's a remarkable journey. It's a remarkable journey, and of course there's a lot of details. That's an overview of the mystery of Egypt, and I've said a mouthful, and if you have any questions about it, that's a synopsis of the three books.
Wow. I was looking at on the website today, Peter, and I mean, you have a lineup of great literature there. I definitely have to order many of those books. I mean, because when I was looking at the various titles, I was like, wow, which one am I going to order first? I said, oh, what the hell? I'll just order them all, because there's so much information there, my friend. And I mean, we really, need people like yourself, people like Rick, and many others, because, even the information that you brought forth with Noble Drew Ali this evening, that information was not known to many of us, myself included, so it's really a breath of fresh air, to see that people like yourself are out there doing this type of research, and really bringing people the truth, and, I totally support you. But as we wind down, my friend, please let us know on how we can get our hands on your great literature, your website, and any other information that you may wish to share with us.
Well, I would say you can order these books off the website, www.skybooks.usa.com, skybooks.usa.com, and you can also get the books through Amazon. They are in some bookstores. I mean, the bookstore business has gone through a lot of attrition in the last 10 years. So some bookstores have them, some don't. There's not as many bookstores as there used to be. All of these Transylvania books and the beginning Montauk books are in ebook form, which you can get on Kindle, you can get on Nook, and you can get on Apple iTunes. So they're available in ebook format. They're available in hard copy, and it's not that hard to get them, certainly online, either through our website, through Amazon, or through the ebook format.
Excellent. I mean, my friend, I'm already planning your next visit, because as I previously stated, you have so much more to share with us, and your good friend, our good friend Rick, he speaks so highly of you, and now I clearly understand why. Because you really gave us some good information this evening, and you certainly taught me a lot of things, and I certainly look forward to reading your literature and learning a lot more. Thank you so much, my friend.
One thing I'd like to add, Curtis.
Sure, go ahead.
Is that what I'm finding now? And I just had 2 Bulgarians with me for 2 weeks, and we went and revisited a lot of my old friends from the original Montauk Project investigation, people who were involved in it, and I took them out to Montauk, and so it revived a lot of these energies, and what the result of that is I realized that 2013 is the big year, not 2012, and 2013 is part of the old legends of Montauk where some of this time stuff becomes a little more active, but what I realized 2013 represents the integration of the Montauk Project with some of the projects that are occurring in Romania. There will be an integration on some level of the characters in the different books. I don't know to what extent that integration will take place, but it is a slowly evolving story, and it all remains to be seen, but it looks like it's going to get a lot more interesting. I also do a quarterly newsletter. I'm going to be writing a little bit about that theme and the recent adventures with my Bulgarian friends. Quarterly, it's the Montauk Pulse, and you can get it off skybooksusa.com. Subscribe to it, or email us direct at skybooks@yahoo.com if you have any questions. skybooks@yahoo.com.
Not only coming from me, Peter, but coming from the entire Occult Science Radio family, as well as the Occult Network family, we want to extend a wholehearted thanks to you, my friend, for taking time out of your busy schedule to be here with us on Occult Science Radio. And like I said, my friend, I'm already planning your next visit, or plural visits. Because, from what I'm seeing, we just barely touched the surface here this evening. So I definitely look forward to having you back. And, you're in the New York area, and I'm in the New York area. Yeah, we have to get together and do lunch sometime. And,
Yes, I hope you can come to my Qigong class in Brooklyn that I attend.
Oh yes, most definitely. Yeah, I definitely have to touch base with you on that one.
I hope so.
Okay, thank you so much, my friend. Rest well, and if you have the opportunity tomorrow evening, tune in. That's when Rick Smith will be our guest tomorrow.
Thank you, Curtis.
Thank you, my friend. Be well.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. And we also want to thank you as well, beloved family, for taking time out of your busy schedules to be here with us on Occult Science Radio. As I always say, you could have been doing other things, you could have been other places, especially with the NBA playoffs going on, but you took the time to be here with us on Occult Science Radio, and we love you for that. Tune in tomorrow evening at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, when we will have with us another giant, Rick Smith. And for those of you who are unaware of his work, go to theoccultnetwork.com, and in the main video, you will see his groundbreaking lecture, European Confessions of a Moorish Legacy. And when you see that lecture, okay, you are definitely going to want to join us tomorrow evening. I mean, that lecture really brought a lot of things into focus for me. So tell everybody, tomorrow is a show you are not going to want to miss. Tomorrow night at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Rick Smith, European Confessions of a Moorish Legacy. Don't forget to visit theoccultnetwork.com and feel free to become a Ton Premium subscriber. You know, if you know anyone who's a Ton Premium subscriber, just ask them what Ton Premium has to offer, and I can assure you, you will not be disappointed. And with that, beloved family, as I always say, I love you all. Peace, love, and power. And please, please walk with strength. Peace.
Come for me to change the way I think, to change the way I feel, for me to go beyond what everybody thinks, what everybody says is real. Today I take a step into a time and space of peace and possibility, and here I'm gonna stay until I find my place, my true divinity.
It's not fair.